Welcome to the Community Immunity series. I really hope you enjoy this selection of hand-picked people that I've chosen to interview to share with you their knowledge and their insights about how you can navigate through these times with physical resilience, with emotional calm. Make sure that you're subscribed so you get notifications of when each interview is being released. Take advantage of it while it's up for the 24 hours. And just know, of course, that if you want access to all of the recordings forever, then you can purchase the package as well. So without further ado, let's dive in and enjoy.
All right, Tim, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Malcolm. I'm so pleased to be part of this. Thank you for allowing me to be part of it.
Yeah, awesome. So, here we are. It feels like it's definitely just the beginning. People are a lot of caught up and a lot of, it feels like it's calmed a little bit, at least in my world. That was that kind of initial hit of a lot of panic that people are experiencing. I mean, definitely we're still in the uncertainty, but I feel like we're almost in this kind of slow motion of just like, okay, and.
Yes, it's interesting. It's interesting to know or to find. I'm interested to find out what this lull is all about.
Right.
Actually, because I heard news yesterday, for instance, that BC is actually ramping things up and going to be fining people and all this stuff for not social distancing and that the psycho-spiritual impacts of that is something that I have fascination in. So it's kind of my come from when I look at things like that.
Yeah, no, totally. Well, I'm really excited to get into this conversation. I know we're going to cover that off more, kind of as you say, the psycho, the spiritual, the emotional aspect that maybe isn't being talked about, but we're all feeling, we're all experiencing on such a high level, regardless of one end of the spectrum you're on. If you're in the kind of like completely bought in fear, paranoia, all the way to like, this is a conspiracy, like, whatever, that doesn't matter. What really matters is the state that we're in and the emotions that we're experiencing individually and a collective. And so maybe to start us off, what do you think is most important for people to kind of keep in mind right now?
No, that's a really great question. Well, when I look at the totality of all the stuff that I've been exposed to that helps me do what I do, one of the things that's been really, really evident to me over time is because even from when the 20 years I spent as a massage therapist and stuff, was this fear of the unknown element and being able to regulate and self-regulate your relationship with what's going on in your own mind, so you don't let the fear and the stress take you over, because in essence that can actually cause more problems than anything that might happen with a virus, for instance, right? This virus, if you look at the numbers, seems to be pretty benign, quite frankly. But the measures that have been taken in response to the virus is not so benign. It's intense. People are having these social disturbances, right? Divisions between people who are normally friends because they have two different things. Like Sasha was telling me about her best friend, her stepfather, who shopped just down in a store just inside the just south of the border into the States there, saw this guy, I think it was a guy, it might've been a woman, I don't know, pick up an avocado and whip it at somebody else's head for not being 6 feet away.
Oh no.
Right? So just imagine the stress and stuff that's going on in somebody, and it's sustained stress.
Yeah.
Right? And imagine that even like infiltrating and permeating into the family unit, right? So you're the family and you love the family, but like even your immediate family, they're all living around under the same roof, but underlying subconscious fear that maybe somebody in the house touched something somewhere, right? And then so these things, like the things that happen in our minds, end up being demonstrated through our bodies, right? So it's been said that the body is a transcript of what's going on in the mind. And that, I think, is something that needs extreme vigilance and diligence with, is to understand and learn and have tools to bring yourself into a more stable state, right? You want to stabilize that nervous system that's being generated by primarily your thinking.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I know when the all first hit, I put out a couple of videos and I says the number one thing that's really important in this time, yes, support your immune system, but even more above and beyond that is support your nervous system. Uh,
100%.
yeah, because that has the
100%.
most profound effect. And again, I think we've had this first wave of hysteria, and we're kind of like, again, it seems to be in this lull, and that's just us here in Calgary, but there's many other places that are kind of hitting those peaks and those valleys of intensity. I think we're going to have a second wave, personally, of kind of that fear and that hysteria just elevated another level.
Well, one of the things I've really been growing a very fond and deep interest in is something called German New Medicine. And actually, I was just having a discussion with my buddy Jeff here, who's a bit of an expert in it. He wouldn't call himself that, but he has one of those minds. And we were talking about this idea of like, there's something called the conflict active stage, and like whether or not people believe in this or not is irrelevant. By all means, do your own research and follow your own thing. And I'm no expert in this. However, it's something that I draw from, and it's something that I'm continuing to study more of, because of the value that I've seen be like implemented when it's implemented by the people that I work with is phenomenal. So this lull that we talked about, right? All of a sudden, this relief pattern, that can actually be when someone actually goes into it, which is mistakenly called the healing phase, right? So, these conflict shocks, and I don't know if you want me to unpack that a little bit more, but ultimately we have these conflict shocks that happen in unexpected traumatic events in our life, right? That cause some sort of trauma, right? Abandonment, this stinks, this is, shocking, territorial, all of these different things, and something that impacts us. And then our body launches into a meaningful biological sequencing that starts going to the resolution of that. So you have an impact, and all of a sudden, it starts being presented through in the body. And depending on what kind of shock it is, it presents differently in different organ systems. And this is all tracks back to embryology, and I find it extremely fascinating. But anyways, if you need to understand that a little bit more, just look at the many studies that's been done on someone who's just under constant chronic stress, and watch what happens to their physiology, right? Yeah. The physiology begins to break down because of something that's happening in their mind, right?
Yeah.
So anyways, there's this idea of this. So something will happen, and then there'll be a conflict active stage, it's called. And the conflict active stage, you often won't see a lot of symptomology, but then all of a sudden there'll be some kind of resolution moment, like a relief. Like, it's why this stands to reason why a lot of people who all of a sudden, who have been working really hard and been stressed out, stress cases, then all of a sudden they go on vacation and they have a heart attack on the beach,
right?
Because all of a sudden and then next thing you know, they're getting sick, right? Yeah. They get a cold, they have a heart attack, something happens. And that's when it goes into this conflict resolution stage, right? And this conflict resolution stage happens when the lull, and then all of a sudden new symptoms will happen. And then there's something called an epicrisis, right? Where it's all of a sudden symptoms like blow up, and then they fall back away. And it just resolves itself, because the body has the ability to completely heal itself, right? So this lull that we're talking about, I would not be surprised if we get a second little blast of it, and can only imagine that the media will capitalize on it. But from the German New Medicine perspective, if you can isolate when the conflict shock started, and you can see through questioning, you can begin to understand the history of it. You can actually project when they'll hit when they'll basically get sick again. Let's put it that way. And the whole idea is to help them normalize the whole event, so they don't cause yet another conflict shock. So like a diagnosis can cause another shock, right? And then these things get hung up in our psyches, and when things change in our psyches, it changes the chemistry that happens in our bodies, right? So like tears of being sad have a very different chemical makeup than tears of being happy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so if people would just zoom out and just take a little bit of a broader approach and calm down, you know, we can be smarter. We can come up with better solutions. We can have better conversations around things. But as you probably know, there's lots of research that demonstrates that basically we, as humans, we get stupider as we get stressed out and fearful.
Yeah.
Right? We start making, you know, decisions in our world that they're all emotionally driven decisions, right? They're not have anything to do with maybe the right thing to do.
Yeah. So what are you doing for yourself and recommending for clients and for those of us that are on the call here today? What do you feel are some of the best actions to take to be able to, you know, like you say, zoom out and really kind of reduce that stress load and get that perspective?
Oh yeah, great question. I can tell you what I do and what I promote. And first of all, like, you know, thanks to folks like you in the Light Cellar, you know, you do have to get the external chemistry, you know, support, right? So have the support that you're putting into your body that can help your body actually get what it needs, so it can actually do whatever resolution process it needs to do, right? And if you don't have the right components in there, you can actually run out of resources and you know, cause more problems, right? So I'm a big fan of what you've put together. So that is one thing, is get your nutrition together. You got to move your body, right? So this is what I call like your physical sovereignty, right? You got to take an attitude of sovereignty about your own physical health.
Yeah.
Okay. And that physical sovereignty is things like, you know, making sure that your body is moving, because one of the things that has come out in the numbers is like obese, sedentary people have a tendency to have more. They're more susceptible to a thing like a virus. Okay. So that, and I'm not a nutritionist. I'm not like that. I'm just telling you what we're doing in our house and what I'm promoting, right? So you get those things inside, and that gives you some stability. Now, moving on beyond that into what I call psychospiritual sovereignty, is like taking care of what's going on up here, is beginning, I promote something that I call paradigm stretching. Okay, paradigm stretching. I once heard that it put this way, that a mind once stretched can never return to its original shape. And instead of polarizing and getting so positional in your thing, to open up your mind to different informations and different possibilities, right? And when you do that, you get more of an omniscient viewpoint of things, right? So if you can just zoom out and stop myopically focusing, like, you know, I know for a fact that there's going to be people out there who are on the news all the time, and all they're doing is looking up at all the ain't it awful stuff.
Yeah.
Okay? So that's going to cause a psychospiritual effect into your soma, into your body. So now you have psychosomatic things beginning to transpire. So having tools to mitigate that, like, so one of the most amazing tools that I've had, like what is called, well, it's the work of Lester Levinson, and he put forward the Sedona method and the release technique, you know, through different avenues and stuff. But this whole idea of not trusting your thoughts, okay? And how we do that is there's a process for just feeling the feeling, understanding the feeling is always paired with a thought, and the thought may not be true. It's just something that it's an association. It's a relationship to the thought, right? And so what we need to do is be willing to forgive all the meaning and significance that we're giving those thoughts, and then let go of the feeling, right? And that kind of brings, you know, kind of my work from the deep issue massage work into my coaching, all this stuff, what I call the WTF protocol, which is you need to be willing to fail, you need to be willing to feel, you need to be willing to face it, and then you need to be willing to forgive it, right? And so if you can dive into the willingness, because willingness is everything, really. When you dive into the willingness to let go and move on, let go of what's referred to as your cognitive biases, right? So we all have cognitive bias. We believe things, that we see things accurately from our own point of view. But, you know, when you really get into the quantum understanding of that, for instance, a virus can both be contagious and it can be benign, based on your paradigm kind of thing. And that's going to trigger a lot of people, right? I know. What do you mean, right? Just look at the science. I'm like, yeah, I am looking at the science, right? And there's lots and lots of science that supports this. So people can have their own, blow ups, but I'm going to encourage you to watch those blow ups. Watch when those feelings are beginning to escalate, because when you start making them decisions in your life from an emotional bias, right? They're often not the best things. So to put this more into, I don't know if I'm answering your question, but like some other things that people use are EFT, for instance, the emotional freedom technique, tapping. But you need some kind of tool to let the feelings in and then not give them more meaning and significance, to stop adding story to it and then letting go of the feeling.
No, totally. It kind of reminds me of a lot of meditative work I used to do, where the Buddha would teach, just objectively, like just to, observe sensations, feel the feels, dissociate that mental chatter with them, just feel it, and in feeling, it's almost like it's a stopping, it's a slowing down, it's a way to kind of stop putting more fuel on the fire kind of thing, right?
Absolutely. And the thing is to learn how to do it real time, so you don't have to go hit the cushion to go meditate, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So I used to meditate. We used to watch sunrise and sunset every day. Right? For years I did this, right? And a whole meditation practice and candle focus and all this stuff, right? But ultimately I moved to a point, it stopped making sense to me, because I'm like, I want to find a way to have myself in kind of full-time meditation, if you will. Lester Levinson actually says that meditation's for beginners, right? And it's like, but to have this tool
it's the same idea as like yoga on the mat, yoga off the mat, right? It's like, be in the world, fully meditating. I like that.
Absolutely. And so, in more of a tangible thing, so you have a feeling, and one of the ways that you can do it is like, okay, so is that feeling a wanting of approval, a wanting of control, or a wanting of safety? Just boil it down to those three things.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you just think, let's say it's a wanting of safety in this particular case, because everyone's going to have their own videos. So I have a feeling, I can feel it in my body. It's going to be somewhere here in my chest or abdomen area. I'm willing to forgive the thought that's coming with it. So I just thank you. I can get back to you if I need you. Right? And then that feeling is like, all right, well, is that feeling more like a wanting of approval, a wanting of control, or a wanting of safety? And let's say it's safety. So let me ask you, Malcolm, what feels better? Wanting to feel safe or feeling safe?
Feeling safe. Absolutely.
What feels better? Wanting to feel safe or like having a feeling of safety?
Absolutely. I think everyone will say they'll feel better feeling safe.
Feeling safe, right?
Yeah.
So one of the most valuable things that I learned through Levinson's work is that you can't want and have at the same time.
Right.
And the wanting is the problem, because the wanting is this lacking, out of control, weird feeling. So if you can let go of the wanting, right? So you have that feeling and then you start letting go of the wanting, right? You're wanting it to be different. Like right now, there's probably lots of people out there who are just wishing and wanting things that they were different, right? And if you can let go of that wanting feeling, there's this weird thing that happens without you doing anything else. All of a sudden, you will just feel more safe.
Right. Very cool.
Right? If you let go of the wanting of approval, right? You let go of the wanting, and all of a sudden, boom, without trying to affirm your way into it, play any of the tricks of the mind, you just all of a sudden, you'll feel more approved of. And it didn't have to come from anywhere. It came from inside of you, right?
Right. It's almost like when you acknowledge this is a feeling of want, is there kind of a conscious letting go, or is it just kind of shift as soon as you kind of like recognize the emotion, the feeling for what it is, then it transmutates? Or
no, and that's a great question. I think people would love to believe that you could just give it some awareness and then all of a sudden it's all good. And here's the answer: is it's both, right? But it's just like anything. It's kind of like when a rocket takes off. At the beginning, there's lots of energy, lots of rumbling, lots of instability, and then it takes off. And then as it leaves the atmosphere and gets into space, then basically you could sneeze and it'll change direction. This kind of thing, because the resistance is gone.
Right.
So at the beginning, it's going to be a very, very active thing that you do, right? You know, I want, again, and so I let go of, can I just let go of that? Yes. Can I just let go? Would I let go of it if I could? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Hopefully. But when people hit the wood, sometimes people are hanging on to it for a subconscious reason, right? And that subconscious reason has some kind of payoff.
Right. Yeah.
So could you? Yes, but would you? Like, would you let it go? If you could, would you? Right. And so the answer is yes. And then what's a good time? And then people say, well, I'll do it. Well, the next time the feeling comes up, well, why not now? Like, how about right now? Because this is the only moment that we're guaranteed.
Yeah.
Is now. So for those who are completely committed to getting their own selves clean, like right from the get-go, right from the beginning of my whole psycho-spiritual journey, if you will, I was of the opinion that the only thing that's different between, like, say someone who lives like from the Christ energy or, Buddha, like whatever you want to call it. I don't care about your own, whatever dogma anyone out there wants to choose, right? You can choose it. But like the only thing that's different between, say, I'm just going to speak to the whole Jesus thing, not from a religious perspective, but the only thing that I think he was actually quoted something saying something to the effect of, the only difference between you and me is I've let go of everything else. I've let go of everything that I'm not. Right.
Right.
And you're walking around with, backpacks full of bricks of them. Right. So what we want to do is start taking those bricks out of the backpack.
Right.
So you can feel lighter and more centered. Right. Because like ultimately that's what we're supposed to be talking about, is like emotional centeredness. Right. And when we release the things that we're not, it's the byproduct. You don't have to try to become anything.
Right. Yeah. And letting go, and then you just are.
Yes. Yeah. But there's a trick to letting go. I wrote a short book called The Myth of Letting Go, because, people would say, well, you think I haven't tried to let go of this? Right. Well, they're wanting to like strangle you for saying, you just got to let go of that, darling. You just got to let go. It's like, well, don't you think I've been trying? So there is some understanding of how to implement it. But once you get a regular practice of it, then it gets to that point where it almost gets to the point where as soon as you give it that releasing awareness, it will go.
Yeah.
And you'll feel it in your body. It'll be just like, oh, it's
good. Yeah, that's the space we want to be in and live from. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like we were talking about with the meditation practice, like as you said, meditation is for beginners, to sit down, to get that feeling, get that conscious like practice and effort in. But eventually you want to get up, stand up, and have that like recurring all the time, every moment. So
yes, absolutely. So, I have these, another thing that people can do, and I'm happy to, provide this to your people, even for free, is I have these things. I put 29 emotional mastery principles together, and they're basically like my Bible, my Quran, so, and they're little short phrases, 29 of them, that I resort back to every time I feel myself getting off of center. Right. So maybe I see someone doing something that I don't condone and I don't like, and I think they're, my lower consciousness self is like, what can are we okay for strong language here, or should we just keep it PG?
Go for it.
Right. It's like, what a fucking asshole, right? Or something like that. Right. All of a sudden, I'm like, I know that I've now betrayed myself at some level if I have a thought like that and I buy into it. So the very, very first EMP that I had that was inspired by a woman named Alison Armstrong, who's this relationship expert that I really adore her work, is that nobody's misbehaving, right? What if nobody's misbehaving? And not even me, not even you, not even him, not even her. Right?
Yeah.
What if, and if we extrapolated that a little bit, because just that phrase can trigger some people. What do you mean not misbehaving? He's being a fucking idiot, or whatever.
Right.
It's like, whoa, wait a minute. What if they're just running the program that's been, they're all, you know, they're just running from a place, or running their lives from a place of some unresolved programming.
Right.
Right. Because, you know, one of the things when I'm coaching with people that I really can sit in the pocket of and believe wholeheartedly is like my belief in them. Like I completely believe that they can resolve whatever they need to resolve. And when they do, they're going to be surprised at the version of themselves that shows up.
Right.
Right.
So here's one for you. Like, you know, like this is going to come up for people, right? I mean, it already has. There's a lot of social shaming going on. There's a lot of like, you know, people are beginning to, in a sense, turn on each other,
Yeah.
get angry, get upset, and beyond that, there's even our perception of the media and the government and how they're acting and how they're operating. I assume the same principles can be applied, right? Obviously, the government and the media are kind of a collective manifestation of. What did you describe it, like unresolved?
Yeah, unresolved programming, like, you know,
Programming, yeah.
Everybody comes from, this is a great question, and you know, it can be a highly volatile discussion with the right people in the room, right? Which is awesome. But like, let's say EMP number 4 here, that says the problem that I have with stuff out there is actually unresolved stuff inside here.
Right.
Inside here. Okay. Now, that is not a statement that many people are going to be able to take to heart. So this kind of work is only for those who are really interested in their own psychospiritual sovereignty, right? Which is another area of sovereignty that I like focusing on.
Yeah, no, that's powerful. That takes a big person to really own that statement. Right?
It really does, because you know what? Division, polarization, all of these things, like the things that happen when we get two ends of the spectrum kind of locked in and beginning to fight with a paradigm, has never worked.
Yeah.
It's never brought peace, right? This whole idea for fighting for peace and stuff like this is just like, it's not where peace lives. My whole world was transformed when I read A Man's Search for Meaning by Dr. Viktor Frankl, 20 whatever years ago. If someone can go through a horrific experience, for those who don't know what this book is, Dr. Viktor Frankl was a psychiatrist or psychologist, I can't remember which, but he was of Jewish descent and ended up in a Holocaust camp, right? Got tortured, watched his friends, family, countrymen all get, poof, right? Beat up, tortured, put to death, all these different things. Yet somehow he came out of that being able to not blame his aggressors.
Right. Wow.
Like he really lived this place of forgive them, Father, they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, holy shit. And then he ended up coming out of there with something that he developed called logos therapy. Like, wow, if somebody can do that, I have interest in how I can be more like that. Right? And that really launched my whole, it's inverted my whole paradigm from completely being clinically Newtonian based to there is something else going on here.
Yeah, and then that's why I love that thread of feelings, because when you're in that state, it's really easy to get caught up in the stories and the circumstances and kind of the hate and the anger. But once you go back, once you reflect on like, okay, how am I feeling when I'm in that state, right? It's not a state to be in. Like we benefit in other ways. There's, you had mentioned it, like what are we not willing to give up when we hold on to those stories? But when we reflect, okay, what's worse, right? Sure, we could take advantage somehow, from this story, but really ultimately what's playing in our own physical body. And that's why I love that foundation of feeling. How does it feel to have that point of view? How does it feel to have that kind of, aggressive stance? And yeah, I mean, the challenge is, bridging and going to the other side, because
yes,
a lot of work, but it's so worth it, right?
It's 100% worth it. Like it is the most rewarding. All of this stuff and where these 29 principles came from is like the most rewarding stuff in my world. Like outside of having my son and my relationship with Sasha.
Yeah, well, it's true peace. It's freedom. It's the sovereignty that you're talking about.
Yeah,
Well,
Absolutely.
what if we shifted? Because I know, Donald Trump is being, quoted as saying we're at war with the virus, right? A lot of people feel that it's like, hey, the virus is the enemy. What about taking on what you're describing in relationship to the virus?
Ooh, that's another big question. Depends on what level of consciousness you want to come at that, at the whole viral conversation.
Right.
From the highest consciousness perspective that I know is, well, let me back up. So let me back up. You mind if I share a little story about this, and then I'll kind of weave it all together? Like,
Yeah.
So I graduated as a massage therapist in 1997, right? And started my practice and built a successful practice right off the bat. But I also had some really other weird things begin happening right off the bat. I worked on this one lady who said she'd been to 100 different therapists with, TMJ problems, jaw problems. And I was able to fix her up in like 3 sessions or something like that. And the third session, I'm working, she's face up, and she's, of Asian descent, and she's face up, and I have my eyes closed and I'm working on her head like this. But all of a sudden I can feel these eyeballs just like they're open and they're staring at me. I'm like, yes, may I help you? And she goes, do you practice Reiki? And I'm like, the only reason I knew what Reiki was is somebody in my massage program did a paper on it. And I'm like, so I'd heard about it before. I had no idea what it really was. And I said, no. And she's like, oh no, I assure you, you do. And I'm like, so anyways, it opened a door, like it stretched my paradigm, like, so I'm like, I wonder what she's talking about, what this is. So began an investigation. Anyways, so I got into the energies while I'm doing massage and all this stuff. And then one of the things we used that I got taught is, to put a bubble of light around you and to protect yourself from the negative energies of other things and people, that psycho-spiritual chaos, maybe is a way to put it. And so I used to do that. I used to do the all the little dances and routines and rituals that set up this thing, this bubble of light, so I wouldn't be infiltrated. I wouldn't be infiltrated by whatever they have, right? And then one day it just stopped making sense to me. Like, I was big time into the spiritualist world, and people are always, oh, we're all one, and except I need to protect myself from you. And I'm like, what? And I'm like, well, all of this was either created, like everything, you can't cherry pick what was created and what wasn't, right? Yeah. The virus, the bomb, the tree with the fruit, the mushroom, the whatever, right? It's all a piece of creation. So what am I being so fearful for? And so I gave up that paradigm and I lifted myself to another paradigm where I started letting things come through me and in through the purest form of energy that I could hold in my heart, right? So it actually I think we actually did some of this with you. I remember we did a session, you and I, some years ago.
Oh, I know. I remember.
Totally. And so I would actually, instead of like send love and through and shake my hands and all this stuff to get rid of energy, I would pull it into me, right? And run it through this purification thing, and I was working with the Taurus energy. And so I just pull it in, put it through this filter, if you will, this reverse osmosis filter, and let it go. And I found that I never, ever, ever felt depleted when I started doing that.
Right.
Right. Because people say, oh, how do you take on all these people's energies? I'm like, I don't. And I don't protect myself from them either, because I'm that. Right. So circling around about coming to a level of consciousness, even with this virus thing, is like, what if this virus is always here? Right? What if it's always part of us, and it's a vulnerability that people create within themselves that allows that virus to take root and start acting in a way that you don't like, right? But from the German New Medicine perspective, that virus is trying to do something. It has a meaningful biological program,
Right.
right? So, and now we get into this like craziness. We're like, well, but people are dying and all this stuff. Well, yeah, but if you actually took the time to go look at the data, right? The data. So in my wine group last night, we were looking at that. Data was the actual topic that we talked about last night.
Yeah.
And when we looked at the data, I started with the Canada website, right? And the data was like, 0.02%. No, 0.0004% of the population has actually died, right? But when we don't have the data about the age and any precursive health issues, but they start having that data in Italy, which is everyone's talking about.
Yeah.
And 99% of the people who are dying. Well, actually, I don't know if there's some other data. The newest data was, I think, 88% of the people that they attributed initially to dying from the coronavirus, 88% actually died from something else.
Right.
Because they had a different condition going on, which just means from that perspective, the body ran out of resources, right? And they're all 80, like the average age of the person was also 80 years old, right? So people get wound up about the numbers, but it's like, you got to look beyond the numbers to, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, things that have been sticking out for me are exactly what you say, that, and even if I'd heard that 99%, okay, even if they're slightly off, even if it is, 89% or whatever, right, had not only a pre-existing medical condition, but a serious one at that.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Whereas
and the other thing that's in the news too, just your everyday average, like CBC, CTV, whatever, right? Like they say very clearly, most people just stay at home, recover at home. Going to be absolutely fine.
Which you would do it, like if you had the flu, which kills way more people than this COVID thing is ever going to touch. It apparently, you know what? I better watch my predictions. I'm not an expert. Let's just. I suspect that that's a more accurate statement and has history, and that's like every year the flu kills like way more people, but nobody's having this like big global shock thing around it, right? Mm-hmm. But this when we get to those numbers about these people being really sick in even beforehand, yeah, that's true. And we also don't know anything about their lives. Right. We don't know how many vulnerabilities, how many psychospiritual abilities, never mind about physical, not abilities, vulnerabilities, and their physical vulnerabilities.
Yeah. Right. But we can look at our own culture and society and know that, most people have some sort of diet and lifestyle related, disease or the precursors too.
100%. When we look at the people that are actually succumbing and becoming seriously ill or dying from the virus, they're obese, they're sick, they're sedentary, they've compromised their lungs through smoking. Like there's all of these things. And like, and the thought that I got lost in a minute ago was all about, if you got the flu, you would probably just go self-isolate, right?
Yeah.
You go home, you get into bed, and you're like, I feel like crap, right? So this whole concept of self-isolating everybody else doesn't make sense to me, right?
Yeah.
It's not. This is not a naturally harmonic response to this issue.
Right. Yeah, because we're not also viewing the virus as a natural result or consequence, having a biological function.
100%.
Yeah.
We might not understand, if for anybody who's interested in that whole GNM stuff, just go type in German New Medicine into YouTube and virus. And there's a woman that goes through a 2-hour presentation of understanding infections and viral things, and how there's a real possibility, for those who want to take responsibility, like what I call radical personal responsibility for their health, because what I've experienced, there's levels of responsibility that people will take with their health.
Yeah.
Right? Some people will take pharmaceuticals. A discussion that I had with Jeff here, who has unbelievable knowledge. He's been speaking around the world on different things, and he was saying that the statistics show that half the population in the U.S. are on some kind of psycho-emotional drug of some kind, right?
Yeah.
Half.
Yeah, that's nuts.
Half the people. Like, we aren't pharmaceutically deficient, I don't think. I think we might have some other nutrients deficiencies and some other consciousness deficiencies that we might do well to look at first.
Yeah.
Right. So those are the people I love to work with, because the people who want to look, the people who got to know, right? Because everyone else is they're just handing their sovereignty over, their own personal sovereignty over to whatever authority will speak the loudest to them and make the most noise.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, yeah. I personally believe we live too much in a nanny state. The government will tell us what to do. They'll bail us out. They'll provide, this and that. And
yes,
this is the what happens after years of that thinking and programming.
100%. This kind of thinking and these dialogues and my own paradigm stretching has led me to grok on a concept for several years now that I call autonomous interdependence.
Right. Yeah, right. And actually, let's get into that, because I was you mentioned the word sovereign several times, and I wanted you to kind of expand on that, and I'm getting a sense that this is interconnected with that, right?
100%. It is basically one of the mandates of a new project that I'm working on, and it's the idea, this concept of autonomy and interdependence coupled together. Mm-hmm. Like if we're going to cause an effective and meaningful, shift in this world, it has to stop polarizing, right? And I don't mean becoming agnostic and what's the word that they use in the gender world? Oh, where you're just non-binary. You're nothing, whatever it is. I can't remember now. But anyways, for me, it's about understanding your masculine and feminine energies inside of you, and then starting to build your own autonomy, right? So we could replace the word sovereignty with autonomy. So you need physical autonomy. You need to know how to take care of yourself. Like my wife, who, as you know, Sasha is a nutrition expert, and she just said to me, she goes, "People don't know how to take care of themselves."
It's
right?
True. Yeah.
And she was so heartfeltly frustrated with that idea. Like, when did we get so distanced and divided from the earth that provides us sustenance and each other and not know how to take care of ourselves?
Yeah, no, again, I think it stems into that deep programming of kind of the nanny state, and the government will tell us and they'll take care of us.
Absolutely. Well, you know what? And quite frankly, so I looked at some research recently, and I'm forgetting there was a couple of websites. They were referring to some studies that were done on the top 11 high income earning nations in the world, right? And one of the things they were looking at their health, but this is more of a medical model, So access to care, equity and the ability to access care, right? So, not just rich people can get this, right? So there's an equanimity in there. But most importantly, health outcomes. And some of the data, the research that blew my mind recently is, for instance, in the United States, and I'm going to lump us in there because we follow whatever the United States do. Unfortunately, Canada just seems to do a little bit after.
Yeah.
And so in the US, what was found is that there is $9,000 per citizen in the US spent on keeping people healthy. So the medical model that we have, the model that we have
Yeah.
in North America, okay, in the States, $9,000 per person in the United States. That's a lot of money. Like, that's a lot of money. Could you imagine if people spend $9,000 to keep themselves healthy every year?
Right.
But here's the kicker. They have by far the highest spend on keeping people healthy, as far as our primary health model right now is the medical system.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm not, like, there are things about the medical system that I absolutely adore. Right. And then there's these other parts which maybe I have questions around. For instance, if this much money is being spent, why did they come dead last out of the 11 top income earning countries in the world?
Right.
Right. And for all us Canadians who think, oh yeah, well, that's the United States and they're all messed up down there. Canada, depending on which one you looked at, was either 9th or 10th.
Right. Wow.
Right. And so, like, if that's like, whoever's watching, if that's your model for health, like, it's all yours. I'm going to choose something different. Right. So building physical autonomy, right, which includes your epigenetic influence on, like, learning how to live from the earth too.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's going to be, like, your financial autonomy or sovereignty, right? Look how many people have lost jobs and are not working, and the amount of people applying for EI, right?
Oh, that's unbelievable.
It is staggering. And there's a political economist named Toby somebody who he studies this whole thing, and what he's most afraid of is not the virus. He is afraid of this lockdown on the economic system that is, like, it is basically generating a depression.
Yeah.
Right? Because economies move slow. When you stop an economy, for it to start moving again, takes a long time.
Yeah.
Okay. So all of a sudden, all these people's ideas of security and stability, because, I've had this job for whatever, all of a sudden, what's happening to their pensions? What's happening? They have no income, and they have no resiliency necessarily. I know these are broad stroke comments, and so if people want to get mad at me, they can. That's okay. But the idea is, like, the resiliency to actually, go out and create some value in which you can have some exchange, right? So, like, that, to have that attitude of, how do I develop financial autonomy or sovereignty, right?
Yeah.
Right. And then there's the psycho-spiritual sovereignty or autonomy, is like, how can I stop being sucked into the peer group, herd think, mob psychology, right? How can what do I need to put in place that allows me to take a step back from that, so I can actually breathe, keep my intelligence running high, and have my own autonomous view of this. Right?
Yeah.
So I don't need somebody else to act a certain way for me to have a certain feeling that I like. Right. So one of the EMPs here is expectations of others is the precursor to disappointment.
Right. Absolutely.
Right? So you can have expectations of what you're going to do and what you're going to put forward, but if you find a way to just work through agreement and let go of expectations and stuff, you will find yourself to live a very much more free, free flowing life.
Yeah.
And then, the final one, of course, is what I refer to as, like, tribal autonomy. And this is where the interdependence thing comes on, right? So these are basically the 3 acts of autonomy that you create in your own world, right? Your health, right? Figure out a way to create value in the world. Every disturbance that happens in the world is coupled with opportunity.
Yeah.
Right? So it's about changing our outcome, our viewpoint, our paradigm. Once again, stretch our paradigm. Then managing what's in here, like creating the autonomy of your emotional self, right? So you can actually feel somebody from a real place, an authentic place, instead of projecting upon them through your filters. And then, of course, that interdependence. There's like in your tribal sovereignty, if you will, it's like it's your primary love, primary relationship, and your family, right? And then there's your social sphere. And then there's your network, And this whole thing is, it's just a way to actually understand that, yes, we're sovereign. We were born sovereign entities, but I don't mean sovereign as in like, you know, I'm my own island, right? I mean the attitude of sovereign, not some of the other stuff that's out there. So, you know, if you're thinking free man or 1099 OID or all these things, like only some people will know what those things are, or monetizing the birth certificate, that's not sovereignty that I'm talking about. That is a game that you're playing with yourself. What I'm talking about is that inside feeling of rootedness and centeredness. Okay.
Yeah.
Anybody who doesn't know what that is, don't worry, it's probably not even worth looking at. So those things so you create autonomy from yourself, then and in your family, right? And then in your, hopefully in your, and then whatever sphere you're going to have. And then you have people who are coming from a position of strength who begin to do things together. And that's the interdependence. Like, I depend on you for all of this, you know, juicy nutrition and stuff, and wisdom and education and things that you can enlighten me on. And I bring something to the table too, right? So, but we all come from a position of strength and not a position of neediness, because needy is creepy.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, just as I'm thinking about kind of this whole conversation that we've been having, which has been awesome and gone really deep, there's probably some people watching going like, whoa, you know, like this is, well, and I just want to remind, you know, it is a journey. I love that analogy of the rocket, right? At first, there's a lot of combustion, there's a lot of heat, there's a lot of friction, you know, but with that trajectory, if we keep that going, eventually we hit this kind of smooth point, and there'll be moments along that journey where people are going to be able to feel and into that reality of like, okay, yes. And there's people that are already kind of on that path a little bit further down, and it's exactly what you're describing, to have that inner strength, that inner calm. Yeah, that's what is going to get us through, and through anything, you know, whether it's this pandemic or the next thing that comes out.
100%. And you know, one of my teachers, he just did this to me one time. He just did this. He goes, and I'm like, what is that? He goes, this is what we all need to do. And I'm like, well, what is that? And he goes, we all need to reach up to someone else, someone who's further down the path than I am.
Yeah.
That can help me. And then reach like this to be that person for somebody else. Right? And that's that idea of the interdependence, right? That's what helps this, you know, chain of consciousness basically be able to be provided to more and more people. But, you know, if people are always reaching up or only reaching down, you know, it doesn't work. There's breakdown, right? So it's, that's something that I've had a passion for it. I've not known how to do it exactly. But it's something that I continually cultivate my life towards. And now I want to, you know, start sharing that out with some more people.
Cool. Well, awesome. Thanks for being here today to share what you have. It's been great and enlightening. And maybe before we go, we'll do two things. We'll let people know how they can reach out to you, stay connected with you. If you have any channels via websites or social media, let us know.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, and thank you for having me. I'll tell you what. How about I do this? How about like these 29 EMPs? If anybody wants those 29 EMPs, how about it? I'll create a page on my website so people can go to timothyroy.com. That's Timothy with 2 Y's, so it's TYMOTHYROY.com/EMP, and that won't be I'll make it, you know, a non sign up, so you can just have it. They can all just have it. There's nothing to sign up for. You don't have to become part of my list, if you will, if you don't want to. But you can have this, because quite frankly, this is probably one of the, if not the most valuable thing that I've ever put together in my world, that I use every day throughout the day. So they can do that. I'm not huge on the social media, but if you do want to go check me out, it's just Tymothy Roy. Just look up Tymothy Roy as well. TYMOTHYROY, and follow me. Like, we might actually do some more stuff going. But what I'm really excited about, if I could share a little something that we're about to unveil, is and a very astute observation about talking about this idea of sovereignty, but also this idea of autonomous interdependence. So something that some of us are putting together and that we're looking to begin to build in a community around is what we're calling the sovereign collective, right? So very soon you'll be able to go to the sovereigncollective.com and just get on board, get on our list if you want to hear more about how we're going to start unrolling this. It's going to be a super organic process. This is not going to be top-down teachings. This is going to be people bringing their positions of strength forward in order to help each other and be part of something that can actually maybe cause some healthy gravity in this uncertain time and world. So that'll be coming out pretty quick.
Okay, cool. So maybe just to sign off, what is your hope for society, the world, for those of us watching that can come out of this? The silver lining.
The silver lining, you know what? I think there are lots of silver linings that can come out of this if only we will learn from it. That is going to be the big, linchpin or fulcrum point. And some of the things that I've loved hearing is like, look how fast the earth began to reclaim itself when we stopped doing things that were just, basically egocentric from the human's perspective. Like the water clearing up in and around Venice, the air in Beijing, they finally being able to see the sky or be able to look down and actually see Beijing, like that gives me real hope. Like, so this whole save the world thing is a bit of a farce in my world, because the world is going to be just fine.
Yeah.
Earth is fine. It's whether or not we want to have a relationship with that earth going forward. And if that's the case, then we really need some brilliant minds to come together, including the brilliant mind that's being hidden inside of most people that they haven't accessed yet. But also like those minds to come together and to start collaborating towards some new ideas, but then having the personal sovereignty to actually go implement those ideas, right? So I have big hope for this kind of getting out of nanny state thinking, if you will, and coming back to and understanding the power of the individual. People don't understand what an impact they can have when they connect to their own personal autonomy and sovereignty, right? And by doing that, then coming back into the conversation from those places, then we can have much more powerful, much more impactful conversations about how things can shift and evolve in this world. So I think there's like, the world is flooding with opportunity for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Well, let's hope that is the new wave. So thanks for being a light, an example of that. And be well. We'll see you again on the other side through this. And thanks for sharing today.
It was absolutely my pleasure, Malcolm. Thanks for having me again.
Okay, right on.
You bet.
Really hope you enjoyed that interview. Be sure to subscribe to make sure that you are receiving notifications of all the videos coming out. And if you want access to the entire video series, something that you can replay, you can share with friends and family, then definitely make sure you take advantage of the offer to get access to all of that. And thank you again for being part of this community and this series called Community Immunity.